Okay. Is everyone ready to start?
Yes.
Good.
Very good.
Hi, Ed.
Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late there.
Good. I think we've got, we've got people in our audience, and we're recording, and we're live on YouTube, so I'll get us started. The January 7, 2021 meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission is about to be convened. As a precautionary measure to reduce the spread of coronavirus, all town buildings are closed to the public. Therefore, this meeting will be held by remote participation. My name is Kelly Grant, and I will be moderating participation for this meeting. I will now turn it over to the chair of the meeting.
Thank you, Kelly. My name is Ed Hoops. I'm the chairman of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. I will begin by taking a roll call for quorum. David Bernstein.
Here.
David, thank you. Rick Bishop.
Here.
Tom Durkin.
Yeah.
Ed Hoops is here. Paul Huggins.
Here.
Ellie Lawrence.
Here.
And Patricia Mulhern.
Yeah.
Thank you. With a quorum present, I will now call the meeting to order. I will now ask the moderator to explain how remote participation works.
Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 23, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access and participate in the proceedings as provided for in the order. Persons who would like to view the meeting while in progress may do so by watching via this virtual meeting or a live feed on the Town of Yarmouth YouTube channel. You may also listen to the meeting by dialing into the number provided on the notice of meeting. We will also post a recording of the meeting as soon as we are able. Please be patient as we work to overcome any technological challenges with the virtual meeting. To reduce confusion, all participants are muted by the moderator. As participants are called upon to speak, they will be unmuted. Applicants may raise their hand, use the raise hand button or press *9 on their phone to identify themselves to the chair. The meeting host will then unmute applicants when they are called upon to speak. During the portion of the hearing designated for public comment, the chair or moderator will ask who in the audience has any public comments or questions. Members of the public attending the meeting virtually will be able to make comments using the raise hand button within the virtual meeting. If you are dialed into the phone number provided, you can press *9 on your phone to indicate that you would like to comment. Please wait for the chairman to recognize you before speaking. Members of the public who wish to provide comment are asked to identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation for the public record, and then provide their comment. Prior to concluding opportunities for discussion, comment, or question, the chair will ask a final time if anyone wishes to speak on the matter. All votes must be roll call votes. After a motion is made and there is a second, the chair will ask the moderator to call the roll call vote, and the moderator will report the vote. All motions, decisions, documents, and letters will be verbally read into the record. If it appears the meeting cannot or should not proceed, then the moderator will recommend that the chair request to continue the hearing to a later date and time or until public meetings can resume normally. I will now hand the meeting back to the chair.
Thank you, Kelly. We will start right off with the top of the agenda is request for a determination of applicability. Andrew and Kathleen O'Malley, 71 and 77 South Street, Yarmouth, Massachusetts, a proposed pool with patio within land subject to coastal storm flowage. And Dan, I think is.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Wonderful. Dan Odula from Down Cape Engineering. I'm a civil engineer and land surveyor with Down Cape Engineering in Yarmouthport, and helping Andrew and Kathleen O'Malley out with a pretty straightforward proposal that's in front of you tonight. There was a fairly recent garage wood done. You can see on the bottom of the screen there. That was a certificate of compliance was requested on that. I think it's pending. But pretty straightforward again, flood zone only. So this one is a RDA for a pool. It's located on the north side of the site. This is on South Street, kind of on the north end. It's well up towards the north end of South Street, but they're just simply want to put a little pool in the backyard. And when you look at that, that is allowed. You might look at grading and so forth. And in this instance, it's a quite level lot and there's no real grading changes needed. So I think we checked in with Kelly and she thought in this instance an RDA would be appropriate. There's no, wetlands or resource areas. A pool, is intrinsically pretty water resistant and a pretty rigid structure. We'll put the equipment up above the flood elevation. It's on the newest flood datum. It's not in priority or estimated habitat. No deleterious effects. Again, it's just a de minimis, tiny little bit of fill for an equipment pad, and be a nice little pool for the folks. It's kind of in the top of the screen is the area that they would be working. So I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have them. Again, it's flood zone only, so there's no real performance standards. You just kind of take a look at grading and that sort of thing. And in this instance, no changes whatsoever. So we'd appreciate your concurrence that this would not require notice of intent, but I'd be glad to answer any questions if you do have them.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Commissioners, any questions from the commission?
I have one, Ed, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Ellie.
Dan, is this going to be a freshwater or saltwater pool?
I would certainly strongly recommend everyone do a salt system, but I don't know for certain on this one. But I have a salt pool myself, and having had a chlorine pool, it's night and day in terms of low maintenance, and the salt level is super low. It's not really salty, but it's just enough to, so you need a fraction of the chemicals. It's a very strong recommendation. And I'll push for that, but I just don't know on this one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ellie, anything else?
Nope, just wondering what they were going to fill it with so that we know how they're going to drain it when they drain it. That's all.
Okay, so I think we'll just have to add the standard pool topics there, Kelly, if you would. Yep. Anybody else on the commission? Is there anybody in the audience who has any comments or questions about this project? Raise your hand digitally now if you have any. I see none. Last discussion among the commission. Kelly, any comments?
Nope, I have no comments.
All right. Could I have a motion for a -2 with the standard swimming pool conditions added on? Thanks, Rick. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Whoever heard that.
That was Tom. Tom beat me to it. Tom beat me to it.
All right, Tom. Thank you. Ellie, would you call the roll, please? I'm sorry.
I'll call the roll.
Kelly, will you call the roll, please?
Bishop?
Aye.
Durkin?
Aye.
Bernstein?
Aye.
Lawrence?
Aye.
Hoops?
Aye.
Huggins?
Aye.
Mulhern?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously for a -2.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Dan. Next order of business is notice of intent for Brad and Jessica Zelch, 51 Park Avenue, Yarmouth, Massachusetts. This is to raise and replace of an existing dwelling within land subject to coastal storm flowage. And I believe this is also Dan.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. So this one may look familiar. It's was just approved. It's the 51 Park Ave. So it's up Malfa away from the water. It's at the intersection of Park and Malfa. We were going to just raise it up, the home, and not redo it. But in looking at everything, it just seemed to make a lot more sense to redo the structure that's there. It was going to be pretty much cost prohibitive. So it's the same project as was approved under an RDA, but it's just a little bit different in that we're removing the structure, not just lifting it up and digging under and raising up the foundation. We'll do all that things. We'll just take down the building and rebuild it. So Kelly just thought to come in as a, I believe it's a notice, so you can condition it as needed. Again, we're quite a distance from the wetlands. and we'll put in dry wells, completely, take the roof run off. So it'll be a net improvement on the site. There's a little bit of a trench drain that'll take care of the very small gravel driveway that we've got. The paved driveway. The gravel drive is to remain on the northeast there. That's a pervious one. We're going to go into the zoning board. I believe it's Andrew Singer or Paul Tardif. One of the other has filed with the zoning board. And this is a requirement of them, of course, to have all the other, committees vote before they do. There's a narrative which goes through, you've probably looked at the compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act in your Yarmouth Chapter 143 bylaw. But again, the runoff is going to be better than it is now, contained on site. It's still the same 4-bedroom, just lifted up, and it's all about, flood zone compliance. This right now would flood. In the future, it'll be safe, even during a 100-year event. Floodwaters would come in and recede without damaging the structure and its contents. So alternatives are just to leave it like it is. The owner feels that would be unacceptable, would like to raise it up. It's a non-compliant crawl space and cellar now. We'll get everything up above all the utilities safely above the 100-year. We're going to provide dry wells or drip edges for all the roof runoff and meet all the new building codes. So hopefully, and again, the footprint is extremely similar to what's there now, just going up, the same bump outs as were approved last time. And it's again a flood zone only, which does tend to limit a lot of your concerns or alleviate a lot of your concerns. And the lack of regrading and the improvement of the dry wells, I think, are not, and the trench drain are enough to carry the day on this. So would appreciate your review and approval. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you do have them.
Thank you, Dan. Also, we had, this is the DEP number for this is SE 83-2259. Commissioners, any questions? Rick?
Dan, could you just tell me exactly the difference between the footprint of the two properties?
So you're asking the difference between what the existing and the proposed is?
That's correct.
Sure. There's additions on sonotubes on the south side over an existing deck. And on the east side, there's a small bump out. You can see the difference between the light and the dark. So that little L-shaped is a net increase there. Just to the west of well, you can see there's, obviously the stairs, which are grayed out, are not big enough now. So the new stairs, which are darker, get us down to grade. So those are slight footprint changes. But it's the same footprint. Just on the south, you can see there's a little bump out addition above and an addition on sonotubes that I mentioned there. Those are, that's the net, a little bit increase over the existing deck. And it's the same as was approved by an RDA by this commission about a month and a half ago. Identical. It's just that the only difference is we're going to take it down and rebuild it in kind rather than try and save what's there. Between the insulation and the structural and everything else, it just didn't make a lot of sense to save it as hard as you would try. So those are the only changes, just a little bit of on the south side and a tiny bit on the east side. Other than that, it's the same exact footprint.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All set, Rick?
Yes.
Hey, Ellie?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, the graded slab is almost 6 feet and the first floor elevation is at 13. So that's going up, what, 7 feet? It'll be 7 feet higher.
Well, right now the top of foundation is 10. It's going to be 13. So it's about 3 feet higher,
Okay.
Roughly, the main part of the house. But you're right, the slab is so you can drive underneath is low, and they'll actually be able to pull the cars underneath. That's one of the few things that is allowed in the flood zone is cold storage and car parking. So they're taking advantage of that. And by lifting it up above the flood elevation, it allows them to just pull the car underneath. So it's kind of a win-win.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else on the commission?
No, thanks.
Paul, I'm sorry, did you say something, Paul?
No,
or-
I said no, thanks. I'm all set.
Okay, all right, thank you. Let's see, anybody in the audience has any questions, comments, please raise your hand digitally. I see none. Back to the commission for final final questions.
Yeah, I do, David.
David?
Just a question about the proposed paved drive. Is there a reason why it has to be paved and not some other, since they're going to be driving underneath the house anyway?
Well, the concern on that was just the turning movements. You know, gravel doesn't do well with sharp turns, and it's just basically just one little turn there. So I think that's their main concern, is that they'll just be just rutting it up all the time with the constant turning and jacking. And you know, you got to turn right to get in and left to get out because it's a dead end road, and I think that's the main concern. But you know, we are infiltrating it into the ground. And when you think about it, you know, but the difference between having a small pad, which is infiltrated right underneath the pad, and having it be crushed so that it infiltrates underneath the driveway that's only slightly bigger than the drain isn't too much. You know, we're still recharging the aquifer and not allowing offsite runoff. So would hope that you could find that would be not unreasonable in this instance.
Okay. Kelly, any comments or questions?
I don't have anything else. I just wanted to confirm, I think it's shown on the plan there, you're gonna have a work line limit around the entire property for the construction period.
Yes.
Impacts, yeah. And then just, I'm not sure there's any catch basins around there, but if there's any catch basins along that either side of the property there, that they be protected as well from any sediment runoff from the property.
Yeah, if you want to list those as conditions, we'd be happy.
I'll put that in.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, then may I have a motion to approve this project?
So moved, David.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
Second, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously to approve the notice of intent.
All right, thank you. All right, next order of business is another notice of intent for Scott P. McKeon, 75 Massachusetts Avenue, Yarmouth, Massachusetts, raise and replace of 2 existing dwellings within land subject to coastal storm flowage. And I believe that's Dan again.
Yes, I appreciate you being expeditious with my filings. I've got to go to Dennis after this, so this works out well for me. I appreciate it. This one is very similar to the last one. Again, and just for the record, Dan Ojala, I'm a surveyor and engineer with Down Cape Engineering in Yarmouth Port. And here we're helping Cook McKeon out with 2 houses that are on one lot. And this one is very similar, where you've got a flood zone, you know, the new FEMA flood zones that went up in 14. Everybody's paying these high insurance rates and are concerned about flooding. So the solution is oftentimes just to simply raise those structures up and get them out of the flood zone. You, of course, have jurisdiction as land subject to coastal storm flowage, so you can require notices of intent on these, and often that they are handy so that you can condition them, especially if there's changes in grading and so forth, which might be a concern. In this instance, the owners have chosen just to simply add stairs to get up and down, so there's no real regrading. And so that takes, many of the concerns that you would have with elevating a lot and perhaps creating an issue with the neighbor off the table. It's simply just lifting up what's there. One of the things we like to do is add dry wells to make sure that there's no change in runoff. We're actually improving over existing conditions. So you can see there's a dry well for the front and a dry well for the back. Everything will be gutters and downspouts to dry wells. And that seems to work pretty well on this one. We've notified the abutters. We've done a narrative which explains, there's no real performance standards within the, land subject to coastal storm flowage. But again, you always take a look at, make sure we're not affecting anything negatively, not building a levee or something. There's no other wetland resources affected. The existing septic is fairly recently upgraded, so we won't have to change that. And it's gravel pervious drive and dry well. So I think a net improvement, and of course, much safer. If there ever is a 100-year flood, they'll be high and dry with all their equipment and materials above that base flood elevation. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have on this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Commissioners, any questions? Oh, actually, I do have a question. Did we get the DEP number for this yet?
Yes, we did. We received it today. It's 2260.
2260, okay. All right, sorry, Dan, anybody, any questions? All right, anybody in the audience have any comments, questions, please raise your hand digitally. Seeing none, back to the commission for final chance for question. If not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve this project?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, could I just make a quick comment?
Oh, of course you can.
Kelly here. I just wanted to, again, I don't think it's shown on this plan, but note that we should have a work line limit around the entire property. Is the fence going to remain during construction, Dan, or is that going to be replaced? The stockade fence?
As far as I know, it's going to remain, so we could put the silt
Okay.
fence right against that stockade, and that would, just in case there's some runoff, that would mitigate it. That'd be.
Yeah, probably just a silt sock around the base of it will probably be enough if you've got a
Oh,
stockade
fair enough.
fence.
Yeah, that's true, because you've got the vertical buffer already. Okay, yeah.
And then the trees out the back there, are they all proposed to remain?
As far as I know, we'll be able to save them.
Okay,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I know a couple of them at least are overhanging the current structure, and if it's going to be elevated,
Yeah,
Okay,
we'll have to
some
limb them
next
up
there.
for sure.
so yeah, if they're going to be,
Yeah, we'll have to
but-
limb them up. Yeah.
Okay, that's the only comments I have.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. Do I have a motion then to approve the project with special conditions?
So moved, Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie. Is there a second?
Tom,
Thank you, Tom. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Chairman Hoops, could I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
Appreciate it. I do have to duck out for that other meeting and prep, but the 159, 165 South Street, I did send Kelly some additional photographs of the trench drains on
Yes,
that.
I got those.
Everything seems to be in order very nicely out there. We got a little discussion on that, and it all worked out well. And Happy New Year to everyone, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Same to you. Right, let's see, next order of business is another notice of intent for Pine Bass 3 LLC, 232 Pleasant Street, Yarmouth, Massachusetts, proposed reconstruction of existing pier with float enlargements within land under ocean, coastal beach, salt marsh, and land containing shellfish. And I believe Mr. Perry is here for this.
I am. Thank you. Good evening. Hopefully you're hearing me.
Yes, go ahead. You're good.
Excellent. For the record, I'm Bob Perry, Cape Cod Engineering, working with the applicant at 232 Pleasant Street. At this particular site, there is a fairly narrow segment of the lot that fronts on Pleasant Street that comes to the water, and it's had a pier here for quite some time. And Kelly may remember, I think she asked for this license and hopefully I sent it to her. But at any rate, it's in pretty poor condition. It has quite a lot of pilings because I think in the olden days, they would use a lot more piles because the spans weren't as great. And there's room for improvement there for sure. Last month, we were before the Waterways Committee and we reviewed this project with them. What we had was an interest in rebuilding the facility, but the applicant was seeking a float that was a bit more accommodating. And so we settled on a close to the maximum 200 square foot. It's about 196, I think, at 24 by 8. And we were thinking about the fact that the lot was narrow and that we were going to encroach toward another pier. And the idea became, I think, worth exploring, that since we have some reasonable depth at this location, that the facility can be shortened. A couple of things changed. The elevation of the deck would increase approximately 2 feet. That means that the ramp would get a little bit longer. And so that enabled us to move the platform portion of this facility landward quite a bit, 8 or 10 feet. I think even more. I have that number. And so there was a shoreward shift to the main superstructure. And that shift is a 10-foot shift. The platform will be constructed as it is with the same number of piles, but the shortening of the main pier and the reduction of the pilings pretty much cuts the pile count in half. So there was some improvement there. And we looked at the float and figured, well, if we had a net zero change to the float area as it exists outward into the river, that would be one way to, I think, in some ways mitigate a larger float here. Although the float meets the 200 feet, and it is an existing pier that may enjoy a little bit more liberal thought than a new pier, but I tried to get you a net zero change so that the float is shifted 4 feet away from the channel. And I know at the Waterways Committee, it was raised that, well, you could have a larger boat. And yet the 4 feet is meaningful because you could put a pretty good sized boat at the float that was there. And although I don't see any reason to change this plan, we could probably snug it in a little more if we had to. The work itself, as you know, would mostly be done from the water. There's a little bit of inshore work where there's some public access stairs to work on. The marsh would be protected during this work. There does happen to be a pile bent in the marsh, but there's quite a few pilings in the marsh today. And we issued to you the shellfish survey. The shellfish survey, I think, given the current velocity in here, it may pose difficulty for shellfish to set because of the speed of the water. But I was a little bit surprised that the count was so low. But they did find some quahogs. And if needed, of course, the area could be bull raked prior to any work going on here. I don't want to leave anything out. We heard from Division of Marine Fisheries via email. I think it was the shortest comment that I've heard from DMF. I think they were supportive because of the elevation increase above the marsh and the shortening of the facility and other factors that I've already mentioned. There's no time of year restriction, although this facility needs a license before it would be built. So I doubt we're going to do anything this spring. And having said all that, I'm happy to open it up to your questions. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Commission, any questions from the commissioners? It's a very quiet commission tonight.
Well, I'm kind of concerned about the southern part of it encroaching to the other dock, requiring a variance for that, which already needs a variance. And my question is, how did the dock to the south of that get so large? Did we approve, before my time, approve that size?
That's a good question. We researched that recently and submitted a report. It's all done, I think, in the 90s. There had been a regulatory issue there, as with many of the docks in the river, and that's been solved. But that facility is from a time past. And that would be the answer.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody, Rick?
The applicant consider giving up the platform?
We've not talked about it. It's one of those things that I can't say that it would survive licensing, but it is licensed today. And I think DEP anyway would look upon that in a fair light, where they would, I'm just speculating, likely be okay with it. It's a good sized platform. I've never discussed changing it, Rick. I have not. So that I don't know what to tell you.
Have you gotten the DEP number for this yet, Bob?
We have not. I don't know if you have. We checked our website or their website before the meeting. Doesn't look like it. So, you know, we know we're not closing.
Okay,
I
well,
haven't
perhaps that's
received-
something you might want to, you might be able to talk to the client about first then, and we could have that conversation next time around.
I'd be happy to do that. I know that it's unlikely that platform would disappear given the fact that it's there. But I don't want to ever say that there's no room for improvement on that.
Okay.
As I know, we wouldn't approve that platform today.
Neither would DEP. I understand. Oftentimes you see a widened area these days on the docks where you can have a cantilever deck. DEP's limiting those types of structures. But I'm not going to go into the discussion of, well, if they just rebuilt the dock the way it was, it's licensed, and you might still be able to exert control over that. But I think the right thing to do here is continue, with the review, and I will absolutely take that topic back to the applicant.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Ellie?
On a different subject, the bottom picture shows a structure. Will that be added on too? And I believe when I was on site, there was some posts going off to the south for a kayak. I don't see them in the plan that you have here. Are they going to continue with those?
Well, I don't have information on the kayak rack. You've caused me to wonder. Did that look like something that was used this season? I mean, I'll check it. I haven't proposed a kayak rack. I have never discussed a kayak rack with the applicant, but it's on the list now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not on the plan, so.
Right. Where exactly did you see that? Down right near the revetment somewhere?
Well, there's one down by the revetment, and then there's one on the southern side with two posts coming out. Not that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's in my photographs. Right.
Yeah.
I just considered that was a relic as attached to the old facility, and I think I owe you some information about that.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, Bob's list is growing.
Oh, it's just 2 items. I can handle that.
Well, we'll see if we can't find some more for you then. Anybody else on the commission?
This is Pat. I just want to know, how long is that pier?
Yeah, the pier today, if I measure it from the base of the revetment, the pier today is 99 feet. And we're going to bring it, and that's to the end of the float. And we were going to bring it to 95. The pier, the permanent portion, that today it measures 85, and we were bringing that to 75.
Great, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Kelly, any questions, comments?
Just a couple of things. The Shellfish report made a couple of recommendations. One about suggesting the work be done in the fall, winter, early spring months. DMF didn't add any time of year restrictions, but this was a recommendation from the shellfish report, just to avoid the busiest part of the shellfish life cycle activity. And they also suggested that pile driving occur at mid to high tide to prevent barge bottoming out, and that generally the shellfish populations were low, but they would just include a condition that any shellfish be relocated before construction begins. And then there's just the general consideration. Obviously, the regulations state that reconstruction of a dock should meet the regulations to the greatest extent possible. So it is existing non-conforming dock, but increasing the float size does make it more non-conforming. And this is a small section of property frontage that they have on the river, so that may factor into that consideration as to whether a larger float is appropriate for this property. But certainly, if the platform could be removed or reduced in size, that would be beneficial. That's everything I have.
Okay, yeah, I think that I mean, I'm looking at that again now that you pointed out again, that it does look awful close to the southern line, but anyhow, I will let you take that under advisement. Bob, is there anybody in the audience who has any comments, questions? I see none. Last chance for the audience members. Is there any further discussion among the board?
I have a quick question.
Is that Paul?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Paul.
So there's the discussion around increasing the size of the float, and then there was discussion around the fact that the pier is closer than it should be, I think, to another pier and so on. So is in essence one of the problems here is that this area there's a need for a larger float to accommodate a bigger boat, but things are getting kind of congested in there. Is that an issue, or is that something I'm misunderstanding?
Well, personally, to me, it's an issue because I go through that area quite frequently, and it is one of the narrower parts of the river. But we can't regulate the size of the boats that they put on the end of the floats.
But you can regulate the size of the float, right?
Yeah, so the idea is to regulate the size of the float and the distance between the docks to reduce the amount of activity in an area on the river. So in this instance, we've got the 75 feet requirement from adjacent floats.
Yeah.
And we've got a 25-foot setback from property lines, which is obviously not possible because of the size of the lot. And then the 200 square foot float size, which it does meet. It's just that expanding the size of the float brings it closer to the southern dock there.
Okay.
I would, if you don't mind, just for the additive to this topic, we understand the 75-foot separation, and there's also provisions for existing facilities, which not saying that that's a blanket relief. DEP typically seeks that 25-foot property line setback. And of course, there's no property lines out in the water, but we often use extensions of those lines. The pier is effectively staying where it is, and it is that 8-foot extension of the float. But the reasoning behind the DEP 25-foot separation is that they prefer the facilities be 50 feet apart. And we're 58 feet from that southern float. That is, although these are properties that are in trust, they're under, there's no objection from the owner of the trust to the land that owns the float to the south. So there isn't an oppositional relationship. And I can appreciate the navigable area here. We have a 8-foot extension of the float. It's fairly marginal, but I want to let you think about it. We've got some information to bring back to you that may assist with the overall evaluation.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I guess I mean, you're staying within regulations for float size. Personally, I'd like to see the float size reduced, but that's what I was looking at first when before I started looking at the plan. But at the same time, I guess I would say I didn't realize about the platform until tonight. So my personal view is I could oversee overlook the full size of the float if we got rid of that platform. So that would just be something that I would like to consider. But it's just more for you to take back to the client. And it's just me who's saying that.
We're going to discuss that, and my hope is that we'll bring something meaningful to you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else on the commission?
Yeah, I just want to say, Ed, this is David. I agree with you about if they could do something with that platform, that would make things a little bit more palpable.
All right. So we have some food for thought there for Bob and the client. Any further discussion among the board? If not, may I have a motion to continue to, what is it, January 21st,
21st.
right?
Yep.
Okay. Do I have
So
a motion
moved,
to that?
Ellie.
Thank you,
So
Ellie.
moved,
Is
Ellie.
there a second?
Second, David.
Thank you, David. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously to continue to January 21st.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Next order of business is another notice of intent for 6 Smiths Point LLC, 6 Smiths Point Road, Yarmouth, Massachusetts. Proposed modification to existing dock facility with dredging within land under ocean and land containing shellfish. That's another Bob Perry, I believe. Before we
Yes.
get going on that, Bob, have you gotten Natural Heritage comments back yet, or the
We
DEP
did.
number?
We did not get a DEP number, but we have received both DMF and NHESP comments.
Okay. All right. So Kelly, do you have a copy of those yet, or?
Yes, they just came through this afternoon, so
Okay.
I have those.
All right. So given that, then I will go turn it back over to Bob and let you make your presentation.
Thank you. And I will touch on these comment letters because they figure into what you're reviewing. Let's first say it's again, for the record, Bob Perry, engineer with Cape Cod Engineering, and I have the great opportunity to present this interesting dock project to you. Again, a shellfish survey was conducted and it was submitted. This project was also reviewed by Waterways last month. And having completed that process, we're back in front of the Conservation Commission. This is a unique pier facility that comes from a time in the 1940s when it was first conceived and licensed. And I hope that we sent that to you, Kelly, so you've got a chance to see it. I think you asked for that.
Yes, I have that.
And the area of Uncle Robert's Cove that this lies within, I participated in, actually did the work to station a pier with 4 slips sometime around 1992. And it is shown on the plan just to the north of the facility we're dealing with. So we have the inner body of water that is the Uncle Robert's Cove inner area. This facility, being licensed and constructed in 1946, also included a dredged channel to it, and that was dredged. And some of that channel you can see by the depth contours here on the plan. The pier comes off of the shore as a pile-supported pier, quite low in elevation. Pile bents are spaced commonly. They're not wide. They're not really close together either. They're on the order of 10 to 12, 11 feet mostly. When you get offshore, approximately 100 feet, the facility transitions to a unique item, which is, there were a number of them in the Bass River back in the day, and it's a sheet pile solid fill wharf. And I believe the reason for these things, because they were a whole lot more elaborate to build than a pile supported structure or an open pile, was that it enabled there to be a seawall effectively directly adjacent to a dredged area. And the sheet pile of the wharf would confine the material that would otherwise be around the pilings and strengthen them and allow for dredge depth on the outside. Well, that's gotten quite old, and yet most of it is in functional condition. We've inspected it. It's got a good frame. The sheathing is, it's getting old, but it's there. And if you go to the outboard end of it, you can begin to see a little more degradation. And the applicant has a very interesting vessel. It's a Huckins 48. It's from about 1932. It's been restored as a retro mod. It's a very unique vessel, and it is his interest to remove 240 square feet of that solid fill wharf as effectively an effort to station a float with a ramp so that the boarding, the vessel berth and the boarding becomes more traditional as a float arrangement, instead of trying to, tie this thing up to the solid sheet pile wharf. So effectively, if we treated this project very simply, they're going to remove 240 square feet of that solid fill structure and simply put in a ramp and float. However, there was a couple of outhaul piles, and the float that's proposed here is 360 square feet. It is 40 by 8. And of course, your limit, at least commonly in the Bass River, perhaps townwide, is 200 square feet as an upside limit. And of course, no one wants to come before the Yarmouth Conservation Commission and just say, I just want a bigger float, because there's no reason to grant that. And the reason I'm explaining about this pier is that there's a unique situation here. There's this massive facility that can be disassembled. And I think in the long course of time, you'll see an entire eradication of that solid fill wharf, but there's no reason to do it now. But the approach here is the 120 square feet of additional seasonal float would be mitigated by the release of 240 square feet of bottom habitat that would be 12 months out of the year. So there's an effort, instead of just tying on to the structure, which there's plenty of structure out there, and extend the float out, because we could easily meet the 75 feet. The applicant, in discussing this with me, is encouraging effectively the consideration that he can effectively extend no farther seaward than the original structure, and mitigate his extra float area with the 240 square feet of solid wharf removal. Now, involved in this, because of the demolition of that and the material that's inside of it and has already escaped from it, there's a dredging component to this. They're not dredging to achieve the 3 feet of water. They're dredging to improve the depth of water so that the boat doesn't ground out at extreme tides And they're going to effectively just kind of clean up the material that's been coming out of the wharf for the last 60 or 80 years. Actually, it's been less than that because the facility was in great shape up until about, I think, 1980, 80 to 90. So the project, to summarize, the 240 square foot give back to the bottom habitat, the transition of the end of this, instead of being that solid fill wharf, it becomes a ramp and a float with anchor piles. And those are seasonal devices except for the pilings. And about 80 cubic yards of dredging as a maximum that we believe would be needed. And that dredging would occur mechanically. It would be deposited with a bucket into a scow where it would dewater over the gunnel. It would be completely confined by siltation booms. We noted that there's a good bunch of shellfish in this area, but they did not sample the area out there. And the area of this job is actually quite, relatively small. And that area can be bull raked before any dredging goes forward. So that's the summary of that. And I would just touch on the fact that NHESP staff concluded that, as proposed, it would not result in a take of the species that they have listed out there, which not quite sure which one it is, but it is in the water, and we were near it, so we decided to file. We come up and touch upon the mapped area. The DMF looked at this, and of course, they didn't just send us an email. They want time of year restriction, and they want to make sure we're not dredging near any salt marsh. And all of that I read in the NHESP comment letter is agreeable. There's no question that we can accommodate their requirements. So having said all this, thank you for listening, and I'll be happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Commissioners, questions? Rick.
Bob, I hope you're sitting down.
I'm sitting down.
I'm actually would like to take a second and applaud this application. I must tell you that there have been many occasions where I have pointed to this dock facility specifically because I think it's an excellent example of a community dock that has resulted in far fewer piers that would potentially could have been on Uncle Robert's Cove over the years. And I think it's really worked out well for the Uncle Robert's Cove area. Mm-hmm. And I'm also very familiar with the Huckins, which is known as a Fairform Flyer, and what a beautiful yacht that is. And I just I'm right off the bat want to give my support to this project because I think it makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Bob, you still with us?
I'm getting up off the floor.
That's right. Okay. Anybody else on the commission? All right, Kelly, any comments, questions?
So we did receive the Natural Heritage comment letter, and they didn't have any recommended conditions. The DMF did have some conditions regarding time of year restriction, shellfish removal, recommending the top of dredge slope maintain a buffer from any bordering salt marsh, which appears to be an easy thing to do in this case, and that the barge used for in-water work be staged to avoid grounding. The only other comment I guess I had is that around the dredging license I took a look at, thanks for sending that through, Bob, and the dredging initially was for the material to fill the pier structure.
Well, it's a little bit of both. Let me explain. If you look at the contours on this plan, you can see how there's sort of a shallower -4 contour that's sort of bulging out. And while we're fine when we get a little bit farther out there, there's navigable water for that vessel. It's just that if it were berthed and you got a crazy low tide, it's really taking it down a fairly slight amount. There's actually a pitch on that dredged bottom. You've got -8 way out there. I don't think there's a spot grade on here, but it's going to drop down in elevation. But some of the material, we can't think of another place that it could have come from. It put some granularity into that material, which is not suitable for beach nourishment. It's going to go to a landfill because of it. It's kind of fine, very fine. Things have been collecting in there, but it's a cleanup of that area, mostly.
Okay, so let me see what else. I think that's pretty much all I have. So we have the NHPSP comments. We just don't have the file number from DEP yet for this one.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who has any comments, questions about this project? Raise your hand digitally if you do. I see none. Last chance for this project, 6 Smiths Point.
Bob, can I just confirm, is this actually a community dock? I thought this one was just a private dock.
No, there's at least 2 families that use it. The other, what's kind of special about Smiths Point Road is that out of a 70 or 80 acre piece of land, there were 4 lots created, and they share that dock that's north of this. There are other properties clustered around the applicant's property near the beginning of the road that share this.
Okay. That's all, sorry.
Kelly, talking to the owner when I was up visiting, I believe it's all one family, or at least the house next to his is family. So
Well,
it's community, but it's family.
The house across the street has rights to this.
Okay.
I can, unequivocally.
Thank you.
Okay, nothing from the audience. Any further discussion among the commission?
This is Pat. I just have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
Is it 360 square feet or 320?
The float is 360 as proposed. I'm sorry, 320. My mistake. My mistake. Sorry, 320.
So if it's a multi-purpose float, which is usually granted at 300 square feet, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
I'm just going to double check the. Yeah, 300. Yeah, common shared use docks. The maximum square footage is 300.
Well, yeah, without going into it, it might be for waterfront properties that are side by side. This is a little different than that. So we felt that it was important to give you some significant improvement by the removal of the 240 square feet.
Can I ask you a question, Bob? How long is this unique vessel that he has? Or maybe Rick can answer that.
I think it's 48. I have a beautiful picture of it. It's quite something. But it's, the Huckins hull was the TT boats. And,
okay.
And I believe if the name of this vessel is Avocet, and I believe it's 48.
So dropping the float down to balance off the 240 that we're getting to 240 on the float, it wouldn't be feasible to dock that boat there.
Well, it wouldn't be as good. We felt that with the additional 120 square feet of float, that we were providing a 2-to-1 trade-off with the removal of 240 square feet of the wharf, because you you would, by right at this location, offer 200 square feet of float if it was a single family dock. Although there's an easement to this dock, it's not by another waterfront property owner. And that mitigation of 240 square feet stands because we felt that we were mitigating for 120 extra. Could be only 20 feet extra, but if that's your limit, then we're better than I thought we would.
Okay, just food for thought.
Okay, and further discussion? If not, may I have a motion to continue to January 21st, and we're waiting for a DEP number.
Come on.
Thank you, Rick. Is there a second?
Second, Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously to continue to January 21.
Thank you very
All
much.
right.
Discussion.
Thanks, Bob. Next
a little
order
later.
of business. Sorry. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Next order of business is continued notice of intent continued from December 17, 2020 for SE 83-2258, Michael J. Lindsay, Senior Trustee, the Grove Street Realty Trust, 8 Grove Street, Yarmouth, Massachusetts. The raise and replacement of a single-family dwelling with associated dock and pervious driveway, as well as the construction of an in-ground pool with surrounding patio. And Kieran, you out there? I saw you're out there before.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Kieran. Go ahead.
As you know, this is a property that we were in front of you a few months back, and when we were at that meeting, we discussed some small modifications to the plan. One of them was to rotate the pool so it was out of the velocity zone. The other was to increase the mitigation between the neighbor's property and the pool location. After that meeting, we got a letter from DEP, from DEP and about the riverfront area. To comply with that, we have added some additional mitigation along the top of the wall. We used to have a 5-foot strip along the wall to the left-hand side of where you see lot 5 right now on my plan. That has now been increased to a 7-foot strip for both those 3 strips of plantings in that area. We had previously counted some lawn in our calculations. The riverfront reviewer has told us that if the lawn exists, we can't count it. If the lawn doesn't exist, it must be counted. So we will apologize for any confusion that we had earlier, but we've taken the highest possible route, and we were using 2-to-1 mitigation for the disturbance that we're proposing. So we've got, I believe we've got everything covered now as far as the mitigation goes. We've discussed the house at the previous meeting, and we have some pervious dry wells down at the bottom of the property. This house will be flood zone compliant, and we are modifying the parking area to reduce it a little bit as well. That system will remain as it is, and you can see on the plan the areas in green are the proposed mitigation. The area in gray is the proposed new house, which is pretty much entirely on top of the existing house. And at Grove Street, we are reducing the front porch somewhat from the back. See the front porch right now touches Grove Street, and we are moving the house back and just having a set of stairs landing up into the building. Other than that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that the commission have.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I'm going to turn it over to commissioners. Questions? No, I would suggest that we issue a finding that the lawn area should not be considered as part of the degraded portion of the lot. Just to do that as a finding for the record. But other than that, that's my only comment on the project. Kelly, any?
I have nothing else now.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who has any comments, questions, concerns about this project? Please raise your hand digitally now. Nick?
Oh, it's saying that I can't unmute her because she's using an older version of Zoom. I would have to promote her to a panelist to allow her to speak. So I will do that. So she should be able to speak now.
Yeah, Nick? Yeah, you're unmuted.
Maybe they're dialing in as well. Somebody on a phone number, 373.
This is Phil Cheney on that number and
Oh, okay.
standing by.
Does anybody up there? I see a Nick. Is she?
Not sure she's able to make herself
It says
heard.
she's unmuted.
Yeah.
And just so I give Phil credit, the landscape plan that is not shown here but is attached was prepared by Phil for each of these proposed planting areas.
Actually, I did have a question about the landscaping plan because a large section of the plantings in that 750 square foot area, I think, and I don't have it right in front of me, it was all bearberry, is that right? Which is just a ground cover. So is there, is it just going to be all bearberry in that section? There's some sweet fern. Yeah, there's one patch of sweet fern, but the rest of it, and then Virginia rose at the end, but there's a very large section of it that's just going to be bearberry. I just want to make sure the commission were aware of that because that's, pretty much a ground cover rather than it being a substantial buffer with different varying heights of vegetation.
We might want to beef that up a little bit then.
Well, the reason we had the bearberry in there is that we were looking to take the edge of lawn back from the salt mark by that 7 feet. And by putting in the bearberry, even though it is low in nature, it will stop any activity near that existing seawall that's out there and pull everything back from the seawall.
That's being included as part of the mitigation. Is that right, Kieran?
Yes.
Okay. Kelly, did you have anything else on that one, or?
No, that's fine. I think it'd be preferable to see a bit more of a mix of species in there rather than just one species for that entire section. If the commission's happy with it, then go along with that.
Any further comment?
Now?
Oh,
yeah. Hold on, Nick.
Okay.
I think commissioners, any comments on beefing that portion of the mitigation up?
Yeah, Paul.
Paul?
Yeah, I think that if it's recommended by Kelly that it be a little bit more of a mixture, that would be a good recommendation. I would support that.
and if we just add in maybe a couple more sections that include some of the sweet fern and the Virginia rose, just so it's not that whole stretch just as bearberry.
I mean, I think
Phil
it would.
Cheney,
Phil
Cheney
go
here,
ahead, Phil.
just speaking to that. Sure. I mean, currently looking at it, about a third of the strip is going to be in something other than bearberry. So I thought that was a pretty decent mix. Obviously, we're trying to keep things low. I mean, the pool is at a low elevation, for views out to the water there. But yeah, we've got about 2/3 bearberry and about 1/3 sweet fern and Virginia rose. I thought that was a pretty good mix. I think we're primarily looking at a a root filtration barrier and separating the lawn from the wall as well. And the bearberry does that as well as anything. It's going to be a pretty dry space as well.
Yeah, I'm not. I guess I could go either way with that.
Yeah, I mean,
Anybody
if
else?
we could just, if we had ongoing report when the plantings have got established and just see how well it's doing as an area.
Yeah, I think actually that's a good suggestion then, Kelly. I think that would be a good way to, and we can address it at that point. If do you want to do 3 years of
Monitoring.
3 years of monitoring reports?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we can.
And supplemented with additional plantings if it's deemed to be inadequate.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. I could see my way to go with that. Is that amenable, Kieran?
Yeah, I mean, but again, our goal was to keep 7 foot of separation off of that seawall, but I fully understand the commission's point of view and understanding that we'll need to monitor and maintain. So yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other option there too is that if, I mean, if it looks like everything's working out, then we wouldn't have to go further with the modification. We can continue as it is. So.
Yep.
All right. Anybody else on that subject? All right, and Nick, you want to give it a try again?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Before I'm not technologically advanced, but anyway, I guess my husband and I, we did speak with Mike Lindsay and explain to him, our concerns from here. And well, let me
before he says that, I just sent some photographs to Kelly by email. I don't know if she's received them or not.
I don't have access to my email at the moment.
Oh, well, there are pictures of this location from our deck and from our window. And if you look at it, you'll see that the pool and everything projects way out into the lawn. And so what we had asked Mike was if he would mitigate the damage to the view by tilting the pool so that the longitudinal end of it, the long end of the rectangle, would be parallel to the driveway and parallel to the side of the house, and then screen off the pool with like something taller, like evergreens that were 10 or 15 feet tall that would.
Okay, hold on, but that's going. I'm sorry, that's getting back into aesthetics again. That is not something this board is going to entertain. We do not use aesthetics as part of our purview.
Well, it's not only aesthetics; it's noise as well. I don't know.
That's aesthetics.
Purview that much.
That's aesthetics.
Okay. That's aesthetics.
Well, I mean, we're just commenting and giving our opinion, so that's our opinion.
Okay. Do you have anything related to the impacts of wetlands?
The photograph that Doug sent also showed. It was from a couple of weeks ago when it wasn't particularly stormy, but the creek, expanded as it does, not to the maximum it can, but to become a sort of big pond, and it was far closer to, the pool area and everything that than one might think if one didn't see a photograph like that. And as I said, it was not anywhere near what it can get to when during the winter when all the elements are right. There's wind, there's, high tide, there's a storm, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if that is, part of something this committee needs to consider. And I don't know about the groundwater. Is it actually low enough to put something in that is being proposed?
Karen, do you want to address that?
When the pool is installed, there'll be definitely groundwater will have to be taken care of at the time the pool is installed. The exact depth I don't have because the septic system is up on the upper levels and it's going to be maintained. But if the pool encounters groundwater, they will build it accordingly.
I'm not sure. I guess I'm also that makes me wonder. That is something that is decided after a permit is given for a pool, and then what happens if the groundwater is so high that it just makes no sense? Isn't that something that needs to be figured out now?
Well, the pool will be installed, and if groundwater needs to be, if a dam needs to be put up to put in the pool, then it will be done in that manner, and the ground will be pumped out, and they will put in the concrete for the pool, and then they will take away whatever damming they needed.
The mitigation on the northwest side of this thing is in the flood area. That's the area that was flooded, in this last, winter high tide. So the water does come up that far. So I'm not sure whether those plantings that you have on the northwest side as their position, are going to survive.
Phil, what do you have? What do you have proposed there, Phil? On the northwest side?
Yes, the section of, to the, I would call it more the north there, on facing the Salt Marsh, I have black chokeberry going in there, and that can certainly handle, it's very salt tolerant.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else then?
I guess doesn't no.
Sorry, I didn't hear. So they kicked out, so I didn't hear what they had to say.
They said that was all.
Okay, all right, thanks. Anybody else in the audience has any comments, questions, concerns? Back to the commission, any last final discussion?
The same question I had about the other pool. Is this going to be salt or fresh?
And like the previous consultant, I don't know the answer to that either, but I would also be recommending salt in this area.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else on the commission? If not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions?
So moved, David.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
Second, Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
Ellie seconded. Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, we also meant to do a finding. So if I could have a motion to accept the finding that the lawn area is not considered part of the degraded habitat. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
and Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, so thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kieran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, just one question. The finding that you just had on the lawn, that doesn't mean that we will not be able to cut the lawn and maintain the lawn. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. That you could still do all the normal maintenance and routine maintenance. That's fine. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, again.
Okay, thank
Good night.
you. Next order of business is another continued notice of intent, continued from December 3rd, 2020 for SE 83-2256. Greg Katsoulis, 154 Wood Road, Yarmouth, Massachusetts, an after the fact filing for regrading and vegetation removal, proposed access path and deck extension within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and pond.
So we received 2 updated plans for the restoration work and the notice of intent, but they only arrived with us on Tuesday. So we need to receive material a week in advance of the meeting to be able to review it. So I asked the representative to provide paper copies of those plans to the office so that I could get those out to the commission to review. And so I asked that we continue the hearing to January 21st, and that we include 2 hearings, one for the notice of intent and one for the review of the restoration plan under the enforcement order.
And he signed off on that, then he's amenable to that.
Yes, that's correct. I think that the property owner might be in the audience if he has any comment that he wants to make, but otherwise, yes, I did speak to the representative about it.
Okay, is there somebody in the audience who'd like to, is a homeowner there?
I am.
Oh, is that Greg?
Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah, Greg, did you need to say anything on this one, or
I was
you
unaware
understand what
that
we're asking?
Yes, I was unaware that he did not have the plans into you in time. I apologize for that. So if it's okay to continue, that's what we'll do.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's all we'll work on then. Anybody else in the audience that doesn't look it? If not, may I have a motion to continue this hearing to January 21st?
So moved, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Is there a second?
Second, Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Kelly. Next order of business is another continued hearing from December 3rd, 2020 for SE 83-2251, Paul G. Mazuka, 45 Crosby Street extension of 15 Ship Shop Way, Yarmouth, Massachusetts. There's an extension of existing stone revetment on a coastal bank and riverfront area. And this is Bob Perry again.
I'm here, Mr. Chairman. Thanks very much. Bob Perry, Cape Cod Engineering. And it's been a little bit of time since the last meeting. I'm presuming Mr. Muzik is on the call, and I wanted to just brief you on the changes that were made to this plan, and also tell you that we made an effort to fulfill a request through Kelly from DEP to address in a little bit more detail the provisions of the wetland regulations, 310 CMR 30, 1030, 3 and 4, mostly 3. What's been done to the plan was that the applicant's concern for the bank is such that he's concerned about having something meaningful in place, and yet recognizing that there's a split, if for lack of a better word, that having a lower crested feature to protect the bottom of this bank from collapsing in combination with a vegetated fiber roll approach to the upper area could win the day, because we're sort of applying something that could be considered best available measures if we were to qualify those best available measures to be defined as other than just a complete soft solution where we've got some form of revetment right next door. That history of the stone revetment at that other address, which is part of this application, that it originally, at the very, very outset of our work on that property, it was supposed to be continuous with 45 Crosby Street Extension. And at the end of our discussions just before we filed, he did not think his erosion was so bad, and he dropped off that project. So the revetment that the Greens did came to an abrupt end. And there's an opportunity to extend this, yes, but it's also an opportunity to drop the cross section. And in some ways, you could see it as a finishing of the revetment here, where the cross section drops from approximately 9 to 10 down to 6. It would still have the same toe level, but it would drop in profile. And as it crosses the property, it allows for about 3 feet of coastal bank to be above it that would then be fortified with the fiber rolls and sand or soil fill and vegetation. As you get to the boundary line with Crosby Street Extension, the last 5 feet would be of a wholly core, just core, no stone. And I want to address, if I might, I'm not going to read you my short dissertation on coastal bank sediment sources, but I did appreciate, having the ability to go a little back and forth with Kelly, and I've obtained, she was kind enough to give me some good feedback about this. And our consideration for this bank as a sediment source is that it's not, if you look at the broad spectrum of what is significant and the varying levels of significance, while every sediment source bank or every eroding sand bank can certainly be defined as a sediment source, the concept of whether it's significant, in my write-up, I put that in terms of what the commission might deem as significant in the scope of the spectrum of significance. Kelly was reminding me that the definition of significant in the wetland regulations is that it only needs to play a role. And so in this instance, the sediment coming off of this bank, which is a combination of fill and possibly some natural outwash sand. The question is it playing a role in storm damage prevention and flood control because it supplies sand to a beach? And it's supplying sand to the beach. There's no question about that. But it's not a lot of sand. And the question for everybody to answer is, in the scope of everything else going on in the river with the dredging and the coastal erosion structures, is that sediment, which is distributed around the river, is it playing and I have to talk about it this way, is it playing a significant role? And I think most would say, since that sand might amount to only fractions of inches once it's been distributed, that if this was a natural area and these were open eroding banks that were of unconsolidated sediment that were creating beaches and dunes and barrier beaches, I think we'd have a different story. But there's a threshold that you reach when erosion gets close enough to a building that the people involved, and that means the owner, the applicant, and the Conservation Commission can decide if it's appropriate to take the steps to effectively arrest that erosion, but also to mitigate for it. So the reason I began talking about this when I got to the description of the end of the extension is that right at the boundary of Crosby Street Extension is where maintenance of those fiber rolls will be needed. And I've never been successful in keeping sand cover on fiber rolls. So a short segment of fiber rolls that's located here at the end, right at the boundary with Crosby Street, would have to be sand covered periodically. And while there were periods of time where it won't be sand covered, that's probably not the worst thing. It'll shorten the life of the fiber rolls for sure. But that will be the mitigation material that would be commensurate with what the bank might be donating. Our position gets to the point where when you begin to add sand over soft measures to keep cover on them, you can begin to, if let's say the entire frontage was done up in coconut fiber rolls, in order to practically manage that, you'd be putting sand on it probably twice a year. And that would effectively create a much larger sand dose into Bass River than the bank would donate naturally. So the best available measures discussion and the concept of whether this bank is significant to storm damage prevention and flood control because it provides sediment to downdrift beaches, I think that test fails in comparison to the bank's value as a vertical storm buffer. And we can still, no question, through the management of these erosion measures, which if the applicant is indeed concerned about his erosion, he's going to have to manage the end of it. There's just no two ways about it. And so the management of the end becomes the mitigation, which is the sand dose. So that's that component. When we get above this revetment, we are proposing some fiber rolls that would then be sand or soil covered and vegetated. My belief is that that will be readily managed because it will not be washed off as frequently. And I don't think we're going to wind up adding an abnormal amount of soil or sand material to maintain the top of the revetment. In fact, there's some argument that you could get a revetment to elevation 6 and vegetate the upper bank and only use the fiber rolls if you had overtopping erosion. But this proposal doesn't want to shortchange anybody, so it is showing those courses of fiber roll. So in summary, we've got a tailoring down of this revetment. We've got a relatively soft solution at the top and a mandatory soft solution at the end. And I just think I should touch on a couple questions Kelly had. We don't believe that the toe stones will require beach nourishment to remain covered. And the reason for that is we've set the toe at an elevation that's slightly below the elevation of the salt marsh. And when you have salt marsh fronting an area like this, the salt marsh is likely to expand and the beach is not likely to drop below the level of the salt marsh. So we're not going to undermine the toe stones with the elevation that they've been set at, which is not very deep, but you have to put the toes in the ground. And I understand the patio and the porch are not in consideration, except that the porch is an integral part of the building. And while we didn't put this on the plan, we have a distance to the top of the coastal bank of approximately 40 feet. And it's quite tight at that corner. The applicant feels that is it's you're just going to have further erosion, and before you know it, you'll be down to 35 feet. So there we are. I've given you the rundown on the summary of this. And so I have no objection to more diversity in the planting. That's, I think, a very good thing. No question about it. But we felt that initially it would be beach grass. So there we go. I'm happy to take your questions. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Commissioners. Nothing? Okay.
Well,
Paul?
Yeah, I think I would benefit from some of Kelly's observations regarding this project.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then let's ask Kelly for her comments.
Okay, so yeah, I had a few comments that I had sent through to Bob, partially in speaking with Greg Berman. So The first of those comments was that the revetment, the rock part of the revetment is at a 1-to-1 slope at the moment, which is deemed to be steeper than what is optimal. So it should be at a 1.5-to-1 slope. So a gentler slope on the revetment would be beneficial. The plantings that are proposed, it's kind of shown differently on the plan, and the typical cross section up on the top of the plan, it's shown to extend down to the top of the stone, and assume that's the way it would actually be implemented. The profile AA just shows the vegetated planting strip of 5 feet. So I would assume that that planting strip would actually extend down over the fiber rolls down to the rock of the revetment. I think that it's worthwhile extending that planting strip further landward, because that, the root systems of those plants are providing a tremendous amount of stability to the bank as well. So I think 5 feet may be kind of minimal. There is definitely space there that they can extend that planting strip. So I would recommend at least 10 feet wide from the top of bank, plus the section extending down the slope towards the revetment. Yeah, I mentioned having a mix of plants rather than just beach grass. We are tending to end up with a monoculture of beach grass along all of these waterfront properties now, because it's easy to grow and it does very well, and it is very beneficial in terms of its root system. But I think we should be mixing it up with some other salt tolerant species, just to make sure we have a good diversity of plants for wildlife habitat, but also just to make sure that there's kind of a plant community rather than just the monoculture. If one plant fails, there's another one there that can kind of take over. So it sounds like periodic nourishment of the toe stones is not required in a situation like this, but talking about the bank as a sediment source, the regulations define it as being significant if it is providing sediment. This is kind of a different system to a kind of regular open beach environment where you have these large banks of sand which are contributing large amounts of sediment to a beach system. But every property along this more estuarine riverine system are all contributing a smaller amount, but it's substantial and significant to this particular environment. It's just a different type of system to an open coastal environment. So every property is playing a part in that. So I don't think we should minimize its importance in that respect. My other comments. So yeah, porch and patio is not generally considered in terms of protecting structures. 40 feet, I think you mentioned, to the porch. That's, I don't know how many years of erosion before you would end up threatening the structure, but that's a lot of years of erosion for this environment where the erosion rate is not very fast. So that should certainly be considered. You could definitely get away with not putting any CES in this location at all, and this property is going to be totally fine for a long period of time, especially if they remove the invasives and replanted it. But I appreciate the comfort that they want from a hard structure. So if we can find something midway with the armoring of the toe of the slope, but then a natural slope above that where it can still provide a sediment source under storm conditions, then there's kind of a middle ground there. And then I was just trying to look it up, but because I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but in terms of tapering to a property line, I think there was some guidelines that are a lot more than just 5 feet of fiber of coir logs at the end of a revetment to taper to a property line. I think that maybe that taper should be brought back a bit further onto this property, so we don't have such an abrupt change onto the town property there, because that will exacerbate erosion in that location. To a certain extent, I feel like why fight nature? Why are we not following those contours of the existing bank a bit more closely, bringing it in closer to the toe of the existing slope and actually tapering it to that, bringing back the beginning of the taper further and bringing it so it follows the natural contours on the slope that's there now. That way we're likely to see much less erosion at that end of the revetment. And I think that was everything. Oh, we do unfortunately have an open permit for this property. So I know that Bob had looked into getting this permit closed out. I had brought it up way back when we first received the application for this project, but in all the continuances and everything, it kind of got lost. So I think that we need to make sure we receive a request for certificate of compliance for that open permit for, I think it was for additions to the existing property. And that is all I have.
Okay. I definitely agree. I think you should aim to get the slope 1 to 1.5 instead of the 1 to 1 that you have currently. I was on the same viewpoint, Kelly. You were talking about the rate of erosion being so low, and the distance between bank and structure that so far that it could be many years before you had to really worry about any of that. I guess my question about what Bob was saying about the putting the dressing the core logs with sand twice a year would probably contribute more sand to the environment than the eroding bank, which would then make me say, well, why are we even worrying about the bank, protecting the bank in the first place? But given I certainly understand the homeowner's desire to shore it up a little bit more than leaving it to chance. So I would support the project overall. If you increase that mitigation area, the planting area behind the top of bank to 10 feet, as Kelly suggested, I would definitely want to see both species diversity and a considerable amount of vegetative height diversity in the plant materials that are selected for that planting strip. And I'd like to see it relatively full, rather than I don't want to see a few rose bushes here and there and some mulch throughout the 10 feet. So I'd like to see that a wide, nice, thick area of vegetative height diversity and species diversity. That's my comments, and I'll turn it over to the rest of the commission. Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, it's Bob Perry. While they're thinking, if that's the case, I wanted to speak to that slope question about the 1 to 1, 1.5
okay.
to 1. And it's conventional wisdom. It's always been my preference to have a revetment lying down. That creates very stable construction, and it does in energetic environments. You get less, I would say, less wave reflection as water encounters that shallower slope. But when we get inside of these areas where we're trying to minimize encroachment out onto the beach, and we are dealing with a bank that's kind of steeper than 1 to 1, and you have erosive energy and you've got loose fill material in this bank, the value of a shallow slope revetment is not, and here's the word again, it's not significant, because you just don't have, it's not a vertical wall. It's the difference is 34 degrees versus 45 degrees. And if the wall has, or the embankment, really, it's not a wall. If the embankment has some textural roughness to the surface, it will break up that cascading reflectivity. And it's not a meaningful difference when you get into these environments, especially when you look and consider the trade-off between the footprint of a structure that would occupy more real estate at 1 1/2 to 1 than if it was 1 to 1. For a 6-foot height, we're occupying 6 feet in breadth. For the 1 1/2 to 1, we go to 9 feet in width. with regard to fitting stones to the bank, that's absolutely how this gets done. I have to apologize for the graphics. The revetment stones here are there's a bit stylized. And the revetment that's shown next door does have toe stones beneath the beach. And we're showing where our revetment would meet those toe stones. Every effort would be made to cinch this thing up against that bank. It minimizes the material anyone has to use. The stones here are not large. I think 2,000 pounds is a toe stone. I think that's actually higher than it needs to be, but it's just being careful. But I don't believe you want to do a 1 1/2 to 1 slope here. I don't, and I'm happy to talk with you more about it if necessary.
All right, I will let the rest of the commission decide. I still disagree somewhat, but I see your point. But I'm going to let the rest of the commission ask.
Mr. Chairman, we'd be happy to do that, but I don't think it's needed.
Okay, I understand. Any other questions?
Rick has his hand up.
Rick.
Kelly, would you mind putting up the photograph of the water side showing the marsh grass in the area? It's interesting. We in the Blue Rock Narrows area, we've had a very successful approach with not utilizing toe stones, but utilizing core logs and fiber blanket for the plantings that have worked very well. And there's a lot of velocity there. There's a lot of boat traffic through there. So the wave action, I would say, is probably similar, but not exactly the same. And I believe that the 1.5 to 1 was the angle we approved up there. That was some time ago, but I was by it just recently, and it's doing very well. I also wonder, it looks as though the armoring at the adjacent property is 35 feet into the property line, and that's at a pretty acute angle. And I don't know, it's kind of unfortunate that armoring was allowed to go into this property 30 to 35 feet on a quick measure. But we look to have a very healthy marsh grass plot seaside of this, and there's a path. I just don't see a lot of evidence of damage, and that's why I would certainly want at least a 1.5 to 1 bank there. But again, with all the growth, I'm kind of at a loss as to why we're doing this.
If you look inside that bittersweet, it's barren in there, and it's vertical. But I can appreciate what these photographs look like. In my experience, except for any mitigated sand, and this sand on this beach did not come from that bank. It's not the quality that came from the bank. But that salt marsh will expand.
Yeah, Rick, the vegetation that's here is all invasive, and it's not stabilizing that bank at all. It creates kind of this just veneer over the front of it, but underneath it's all eroding. If all the invasive vegetation was removed and deep-rooted vegetation was put in its place, it probably would be fairly stable. It's just that it's become totally overrun with invasives. So obviously that's the other option, is that you just totally revegetate this bank with species that are deep rooted and are going to stabilize the slope, and that will probably to a large extent minimize the erosion issue totally, and you wouldn't need any kind of stone revetment. You will get some erosion during storm events still, but it'll eliminate a lot of the problem that they're having.
Thank you very much.
One more point. If you look to the north here, there's a different geology entirely. There's a bit of a bulge in the shoreline where, yes, I think you could classify the area as dune, but it's like a high salt marsh deposit. And that type of feature is completely lacking at this location. And the difference accounts for why I think that the the bank is doing so much better to the north, where it is a gently sloping bank. It's all beach grass, but there's a foreshore there that's about 25, 30 feet wide that is protecting that bank. And with the beach deposit here susceptible to being washed away, it just undercuts the bank. And the fiber roll approach to the lower end of it will be a wet fiber roll approach. Those will last about 5 years if they don't get ripped out, but they have the potential to last 5 years when they're wet. And you'll be back in here rebuilding those. And it's that repetitive work that is what part of this application is trying to avoid. And while at the same time blending that with the soft approach. But the 1.5 to 1, we can draw that and see how it goes. It'll cut the top of the bank back a little bit. And it's almost counterproductive, but if the bank is stabilized, perhaps cutting it back is not such a threat.
I see what you're saying, Bob, about this is a less high energy environment. So in terms of wave reflection, it's not as big an issue. But off the top of your head, what's the recommended setback from property lines for a CES? Because I thought there was a guideline of like 20 feet or 25 feet.
Well, it depends. I've got one in Chatham that's I'm holding 60 feet only because it's facing the Atlantic Ocean. If you have an area, I've often put seawall management into the terms of the least objectionable alternative. We're not holding anything to the lot line here with the fiber rolls because those fiber rolls are going to be a location where sand is placed. You could possibly, let me answer the question for you. I would typically hold 10 feet for a coastal erosion structure that was going to be isolated because of the concept of end scour in an energetic environment. This location is directly adjacent to the area we're speaking of, where we have the beginning of this other shore feature. We also have the road that goes right down there where somebody can very, very readily deposit occasional doses of sand on top of those fiber rolls. I don't believe that the fiber rolls are going to scour the public landing, but if there's a large measure of concern, we can hold some distance. But once we've done that, then the applicant has what I still classify as the least objectionable alternative of managing that area with sand or soil and vegetation. So that I think accomplishing that, if we're going to shorten this, then you're going to have a break between the end of the fiber rolls and the end of the property. And then that becomes an area that the applicant experiments with soil and plantings. And if it's not working, you could return and discuss how to stabilize that. So I don't want to shorten it, but
Yeah, I just was looking up the guideline. They say that the entire CES should end 15 to 20 feet from the property line where it's feasible. Obviously, yeah, you've got these properties all kind of pushing up against each other, so it's a little more difficult.
Yeah, I've discussed this with the owner, that there's never going to be relief at that point. It's going to be a managed area. And, there's public access there. There's a lot of vegetation. He's got to stay off the public way. And if you think about the occasional storms that will try to ravage this area, his obligation will be to recover that end. He'll have to cover those up. And in a way, it's almost a ready-made formula for the mitigation. Whereas you're concerned about sediment, I don't think adding sediment there is going to supersede what the bank would donate, not for a very long time. My point on that was if you were managing the whole bank with sediment-based solutions, you'd be overdosing, but not at the very end. We can hold some distance to that lot line, several feet. And I think, you know, the management of the fiber rolls is going to be necessary. And, you know, they're coming 10-foot rolls. So I think it's fine the way it is, but we can cinch it up a little.
Okay. Any further discussion among the commission? Is there anybody in the audience who has any comments, questions about this project? Raise your hand digitally if you do. I see none. So to bring this all home then, folks, I just need to get a little bit of a feel from the board then. Yes, you're adamant about the 1 to 1.5.
Yes, I think we should do the 1 to 1.5.
Rick, I know you said yes. Anybody else want to chime in? I would agree myself.
Yeah, that would be fine. Yep.
Okay, and we're still good with the 10-foot planting area behind, and then still including the planted area on the slope toward the top of the slope going down toward the groin port, or sorry, the it's getting too late, folks. The rocky area. There you go.
Rock, that'll do it.
I understand.
With diverse plantings.
And yeah, with the diverse both species and vegetative height diversity. Is there anything else I'm missing? Things that we haven't covered then? If not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions?
So moved, David.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
Second, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Sure. Can I just clarify for the order? So we're going to go for a 1.5 to 1 slope for the revetment, a 10-foot planting strip from the top of slope, plus the bank itself will be vegetated. We're going to increase the plant diversity. Was there one other thing that I missed there, or was that the
Species height diversity, or vegetative
Yeah.
height diversity and
Height
species diversity. So yeah, that would be good.
species? Okay. And then we should include in the order ongoing management of the end areas
And
with nourishment as needed. And
right. And did you want to do a monitoring report for 3 years?
yeah.
Okay.
Based upon this, you'll be expecting a revised plan from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will be taking care of that. I'll look certainly at that end when we change the slope value.
Yeah, I think we can still go ahead and close it out if Kelly, if you're comfortable just reviewing the plan before issuing the order.
Yeah, I think the only issue will be if any problems come up with revising the slope and the end effect and everything. So just to make sure that all falls into line, but all being okay, then yeah, we'll go ahead and I can issue the permit once we receive the updated plan. Otherwise, I can bring it back.
Okay, good. All right, Bob, you're all set with that then, right?
I am. I think the applicant will be satisfied. And,
okay. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop?
Aye.
Durkin?
Aye.
Bernstein?
Aye.
Lawrence?
Aye.
Oops.
Aye.
Huggins?
Aye.
Mulhern?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
thank you very much for your thoughtful review, and good night to you all. Happy New Year, and I will see you soon.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
Thank you, and good night.
Right, moving on, we are moving into certificates of compliance. The first one is SC 83-2208 for 159, 155 South Street, Yarmouth. I hear, Kelly, that Dan has provided additional information. Does that change your recommendation on that or no?
Yeah, so I'll just show you. So this was the approved plan. So we have bordering vegetated wetland over here. This is all a vegetated buffer zone. They put in this pool and patio here, and they put in a garage. The plan included this trench drain on the patio, and then down here, it's not shown on this plan, was an infiltration trench, which is capturing this runoff from here, but also the downspouts and gutters from the new structure, and it was all being infiltrated in a trench here. But when I went and took a look at the property, there's these outfalls along the base of the retaining wall. So you can see them here. And so that indicated to me that maybe this drainage trench was actually discharging out here instead of out to the retaining wall here instead of out to the drainage trench. This shows you the drainage trench here that was for infiltration. So I raised this with Dan just to confirm, and he sent through, and they are in my email if you want to see them, but he sent through photos of when they did the work, and apparently the outfalls that we're seeing in this photo are footing drains for the retaining wall itself, but the drainage areas here from the trench drains and from the gutters and downspouts are connected to this infiltration trench here. And they showed all the images of the pipe work leading to this area and showed images of them putting that in. So based on that, I'm satisfied that they did do the work according to the plan. I was out here when it was raining and there was no flow coming from these. So that kind of indicates that it's not draining this entire area. So to me, that seems satisfactory.
Kelly, those footing drains are my experience as well. So I would support that.
Okay. Right. That's good.
All right, so we're all good with that then?
Yeah.
Okay, do I have a motion to issue the COC for SC 83-2208?
So moved, Ellie.
All right, thank you, Ellie. Is there a second?
Second, Tom.
Thank you, Pat. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Bishop,
Aye.
Birkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
and Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right. We're moving on. I'm going to do a bunch all together now because these are easy. I just had one question for Kelly for the Standish Way and Baxter Ave. Those are the town. Are you set with just the, can we add that with the
Just with ongoing
continuing conditions?
Yeah, just with ongoing conditions for those two because they require ongoing operation and maintenance of the stormwater structure.
Okay. All right, so then do I have a motion to issue certificates of compliance for SE 83-1515 106 Pheasant Cove Circle, SE 83-63 One Shore Road, SE 83-1133 One Shore Road, SE 83-1449 One Shore Road, SE 83-2217 146 Standish Way with ongoing conditions, SE 83-2177 Gleason Avenue, Baxter Avenue with ongoing conditions.
So move.
Thank you, Rick. Is there a second?
Second, Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you, everybody. Moving on, we got a request for approval of an updated plan for SE 83-2041 66A River Street, Yarmouth. We'll give Kelly a moment to to recover
Find the file.
from the COCs.
Okay, let me just go through. Oh, okay. So the first, and we have Mr. Chismus in the audience, but this is what I'm assuming is going to be a fairly simple approval. This This is the area at the end of the boardwalk where it connects with the upland area, and it's a relatively steep slope down. And he was just wanting to put in a series of granite steps in this area here, so they would be at grade, just so that people aren't walking down a steep slope to the dock. So this would just be an approval of the to update the plan for the under the existing order of conditions. I did have just some other images just to show the condition of the site. I did want to just confirm, because this area here, I believe, is supposed to be revegetated under the order. So I just want to confirm, and that was going to be completed. But you can see, well, it's hard to see because they're kind of bare plantings at the moment. But this is the mitigation area where some dormant shrub plantings have been put in. And there's still a bit more of the plantings of the more herbaceous plants that still need to go in. But you can see here the shrub plants have been put in this area. So that was just to, I don't know if everyone made it out to the property. They wanted to see an update to that. But this request is just for this area here, for these 3 steps going up in the spot here.
Yeah, I'm good with for the steps for that portion for the updated plan.
Me too.
Any issues with anybody? Anybody in the audience that needs to discuss this? Raise your hand digitally. I see none. Last chance. All right. If I could have a motion to accept the approved updated plan for SE 83-2041 66A River Street.
So moved.
Thank you, Rick. Is there a second?
Second, David.
Thank you, David or Paul. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. So, Mr. Chismis, I'll send you something in writing just to confirm that approval has been granted, so that you can go ahead with the change to the plan.
All right. Next order of business is another request for approval of an updated plan for SE 83-2196 117 Pockanacket Road, Yarmouth.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chismis still has his hand raised. I don't know if you want...
No, he's gone now, so we must have answered his question.
Okay.
Okay, so the next one is, this is a project that was approved by the commission a year or so back at 117 Pockanacket Drive. And this is an aerial image of, I think this is pre-construction, but it shows there's just an expansive lawn between Parker's River and the structure. They did get approval to add in this deck and porch area here, which they have done. And they're at the stage of putting in the mitigation plantings, which is a 4-foot wide strip along the river here. What they're asking to do is there's a 18-inch cap along the top of the bulkhead, and they wanted to extend that cantilevered and double its width to 3 feet, so that it was more of an area where they could actually walk along and sit. And you know, some of these things I can kind of approve administratively. This one was kind of borderline because it's riverfront area and it could be deemed to be a structure within the no disturb zone. So I wanted to get your feedback on it. I did have the suggestion that they have a 4-foot wide buffer strip of beach grass proposed at the moment, that maybe because this is disturbance in the riverfront area within the 100 foot, that they could do the 2-to-1 mitigation. So actually add an additional 3 feet of mitigation plantings in this lawn area. So that's one suggestion, but I want to get your feedback on it.
I think that would be a good idea. I would again have the same comments, increased species diversity and increased vegetative height diversity for the additional planting area. Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Agree.
All right. Is there anybody in the audience who has any comments, questions about this concern or about this project? Raise your hand digitally if you do. Okay, I see none. Any further discussion amongst the commission? If not, may I have a motion to approve the update with the additional mitigation planting area? I'm sorry, this is for SE 83-2196.
So moved. Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie. Is that David? Who
I can do
seconded?
it. Sure, David.
Okay. I heard somebody say something, so. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Oops,
Aye.
Aye.
Huggins, Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you. All right, so our next order of business is moving into the other business section. We have a discussion on water quality implications of proposed development in the Bass River watershed. Kelly, I'm going to let you start this off, and we'll go from there.
So we received through a letter from Irene Payne and Jim Wolf of 24 Gooseneck Road, and I see Mr. Wolf is in the audience this evening, with some concerns about nitrogen loading from new development in the Upper Bass River watershed. Basically, there's some concern with a new proposed development. It's a 14 4-bedroom development, and I'm going to just show you a slide for context. So this is the parcel that's off Route 6A that they're looking to develop, and this is the proposed layout of the development. So there was concerns with the increased nitrogen loading on the watershed, on the Bass River watershed, which does have a TMDL for impaired water quality. And, you know, with everything that we're doing to try and improve water quality through the wastewater planning process, there were some concerns that this is having a negative impact rather than a positive impact. And then just for a little bit of context, I've kind of briefly seen this project at a informal site plan review. And to date, my only comments have been that it's non-jurisdictional for the Conservation Commission. It's not within 100 feet of any wetlands. There is an isolated wetland down in this area here, but any of the development is well outside the 100-foot buffer to that. So the only jurisdiction there is for this project is in terms of stormwater for the Conservation Commission. And they are looking at retaining and treating any stormwater runoff on site. So they meet the requirements of the stormwater regulations. Having said that, based on the comments that were provided, there was interest in at least having a discussion about what this means in terms of the aims of the town of, you know, improving our water quality. I did have a discussion with some town staff and the DEP about this project and just generally about development and how it affects the nutrient load on the existing nutrient load on water quality. For this development, 75% of the lot is within the Bass River watershed, and the other part of the lot is actually in the Chase Garden Creek watershed, which is to the north. So I think we're looking just up in this area here. So part of the lot is flowing in this direction towards Mill Pond, and the rest of the lot is flowing in the opposite direction, which is a nutrient sink. So it would be beneficial if the development was discharging the nutrient infiltration in that direction. So there are some kind of ideas and recommendations that can be made to the applicant in terms of designing the project so that it kind of bears that in mind rather than increasing the load on the Bass River watershed, but more directing that discharge to the other watershed where there isn't the nutrient load issue. Currently, there are no regulations that address nutrient impaired water bodies. Title V is it in terms of septic regulations. And so as long as they meet Title V, there are no other requirements, regardless of whether there is a TMDL on the receiving watershed. The property is outside of the APD Zone 2. The town doesn't have any local Board of Health or zoning bylaw regulations that would limit such a development, and that's kind of where this would lie if the town did choose to put in those kind of restrictions. It would need to set either with the Board of Health or the zoning bylaw. So really it comes down to just encouraging the developer to look at other options, such as like a community septic system, which collects the wastewater from the entire development, treats it in the northern section of the property, where it would then be discharging to the other watershed rather than the Bass River watershed. I think if there's anything else. This part of town is currently included in phase 8 of the comprehensive wastewater management plan. I was told that anything after phase 2 is kind of still up for revision. So it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be 50 years down the road before this area is addressed. That will depend on how the priorities change over time. But at this stage it is in phase 8. So it's a long way down the track in terms of being sewered. But if they did choose to go to a community system for the development, then they would be in a much better position to connect to a sewering system that went through that area, because there'd be a single point of connection. The MDLs and the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan are not enforceable documents for permitting, but they are a document that can be referenced by regulatory bodies in making their permit decisions. And the Bass River watershed is not included in our Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan because at the time that it was written, the Mass Estuaries Project report was not completed for that watershed. So it's not even included in our current management plan. And I think that is all of the information that I have. So I'll open up for you guys to discuss further if you wish.
Well, I think first of all, let me commend you for an excellent summary. I think you have done I think you've answered all of any questions could possibly even raise about this at this point. I would say that, I mean, from a conservation standpoint, it does appear as though we don't really have anything to say in this particular project too much. I would certainly encourage them to. And I like to see that they're doing all of their stormwater, crossing their T's and dotting their I's with that. I mean, I think it's sad to see another, 14 acres or so of property to go to development. But I mean, I realize that's the way things go. So I certainly am going to encourage people if they don't particularly support the project, that they should certainly write a letter to the town, to planning board and to zoning, to let them know, let their opinions be known about that. I think I certainly will be doing the same. Anybody else on the commission have any comments, questions?
Yeah, I have maybe a question, a comment. I also, it's just too bad that property like that just can't be acquired by the town. You would think that there would be some investigation of that, maybe even through the CPC, but so far I don't think that has come along. I have no idea what the cost of that property is. But and I agree that Kelly gave an incredibly comprehensive summary of the possibilities there. But I wonder, in the comments, Kelly, you mentioned something about a community system, and would it be at all appropriate as a commission to, at some point in time, write a letter to for example, whether it be the planning board or somebody like that, recommending a system, one system of treating the wastewater over another? Maybe this doesn't fall within our purview, but maybe a recommendation from a board that concerns itself with some of these kinds of issues, or should that be done on an individual basis, as Ed indicated he is willing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there was a consensus among the commission that you wanted to write a letter of recommendation, then you can certainly do that. I mean, it doesn't, it doesn't hold regulatory weight, but it is
No.
advisory and it is encouraging. And, the planning board, when they're looking at this, if the applicant is requiring any relief for anything in terms of zoning, then it may be something that they can use to encourage them to choose a community type system at a particular point on the property. So there are ways that they can encourage them to do these things, especially if there is support from individuals or boards to do that. So if there's a consensus that you want to do a letter or something, we can certainly do that.
I feel very strongly, Tom Durkin, that we have an obligation as a Conservation Commission to address issues which are problematic in the town of Yarmouth. And for us to not make a comment as a commission about this particular situation would be a dereliction of our responsibility. I would like Rick Bishop to give us a little background on the headwaters of the river and his work and how this development would negatively impact the efforts of the Friends of Bass River. Rick, are you available?
Sure, Tom. It's interesting, the MEP report that Kelly spoke to is Mass Estuaries Program in 2011 updated their findings, and they found that the Mill Pond area, the Upper Bass River watershed area, required a 71% reduction in nitrogen. The Mass Division of Fisheries has indicated that that fishing and shellfishing is prohibited in this area because the waterways are so sick. This past year, the Friends of Bass River, in partnership with the town, we were awarded a EPA grant for nearly $300,000 to study and plan improvements to that watershed area to improve the water quality. It seems to me that if we were awarded that, we have a responsibility to ensure that we're not adding additional nitrogen to the area that we're trying to clean. So it's a ongoing challenge that this project or any larger project will affect this Upper Bass River watershed area.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kelly, for your condensation of all of the information. I certainly will be willing to join with you and Ed and anyone else, Rick, to write a letter for the commission and address it to the Board of Selectmen. And then they can disseminate. We have an obligation to speak to this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Anybody else on the board?
Yes, I agree with Tom. I would just add that we should send it directly to the, not only to the Board of Selectmen, but to the planning and zoning boards too.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I have one question. On a somewhat pessimistic note, I don't think we're going to stop the building of these houses. But Kelly, you mentioned that there might be a way to send the water off to nitrogen mitigation area. Is that how you put it?
So yeah, this property is kind of split that 75% of the property drains to the Bass River watershed and the other 25% drains to the Chase Garden Creek watershed, which is considered to be a nitrogen sink. So if they were to use a community septic system in the north part of the property where all of the septic flows went to that part of the property and then infiltrated from there, in theory at least, that those nutrients are entering a different watershed. So therefore they're going into a watershed that can handle the nutrient load. and sparing the upper Bass River watershed. So, but that would require them to kind of change the layout of the subdivision that they're proposing. And I think subdivision may be the wrong word, but just the layout of the parcel, I think it would require them to alter that to be able to have an area in the north of the property that was designated for that community septic system.
Would it mean them losing a lot, or just change the layout and still end up with 14 lots?
I think
or do you not know?
I don't know for sure. It may mean that they would lose a lot, or that they, I'm not sure exactly. It may mean that they would lose a lot.
I would assume that they would lose a lot. I would assume that they would have the responsibility to mitigate any nitrogen overload would be the responsibility of the developers. We can't have someone come into the town of Yarmouth and rape it.
Ed,
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
how far along is this thing? I mean, we see a subdivision plan and all that sort of thing. Has the planning board already kind of
I think at this,
yeah,
I think it's had some informal review. And I think that when I said subdivision that I was speaking incorrectly. I think it's a plan of like common development. Like I think all of these properties are going to remain within the management of the applicant's company to manage.
Yeah.
But I think at the moment it's had some informal review, and it's about to go through some of the more formal review processes through the planning board and things.
Oh, would this be, I'm sorry. So would
yeah,
this
so there will be the opportunity for comment from the public.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a letter, if we prepared a letter or what have you, this would be an opportune time to do it. We should do it.
That's
now.
right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
If I may, I would also send a letter to the historical Route 6A historical committee we have, because I'm under the impression that they're not supposed to do any more curb cuts on 6A in Yarmouth, but that may be old news. But I think we should send one to them too, because it's certainly going to affect them.
Yeah, there's already a sign up there. Somebody stuck a sign in there saying no more curb cuts. And it is a little bit of a treacherous area.
I did see that.
I think that everybody, I think there'll be a lot of discussion about it. But I would be happy to join in with anybody to develop a letter to go to the planning board and others appropriate boards.
No, it's my opinion, and along with what Kelly said about the community septic system, but there are certainly well-developed alternative septic systems available that could be considered for this project as a solution.
Is there somebody who is volunteering to do a draft letter that we can have reviewed by everyone and agreed on?
I'll take that responsibility if you would like me to.
That would be wonderful, Tom, if you don't mind, if everyone's.
I'll help you, Tom, if I could.
I'd appreciate it very much, Paul.
Yeah, just let me know.
Thank you.
Another question is, I don't know if there was some discussion, very minimal discussion at the Community Preservation Committee meeting about this property, and there is an open space committee, and I don't know if there's been serious consideration for acquiring this property, and maybe it's way past that point right now. I know there are other pieces of property that they kind of have their eyes on as well, but maybe at the next Community Preservation Committee meeting, I'll pursue that a little bit more and find out a little bit more about that.
Paul,
Yeah, that'd be good,
I'll
I
also
think.
bring it up to the wastewater advisory committee as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of signs popping up for land for sale, and a couple are in close to some of the well areas off of Higgins Carl Road. And so I don't think this is a one-time problem.
For the commission's information, I can tell you that the Open Space Committee tried to buy this property years ago. Both this property and the one in Higgins Carl Road were owned by the Catholic Church, and just recently were put on the market. So the town has history and successfully trying to buy it, but things have changed, obviously.
All right, so it looks, Kelly, do we need I guess we should take a formal motion to write the letter, is that right?
Can't hurt, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so could I have a motion then to first of all, just the motion to write the letter? Do I have a motion to do that effect?
So moved, David.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
Yeah, Paul. Second.
Okay, Paul, thank you. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Bernstein?
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
yes.
Yep.
I'm not used to going first.
Sorry, yeah, I changed it up for this one. Keep you on your toes.
You fooled me. What's going on here?
Huggins?
Aye.
Bishop?
Aye.
Lawrence?
Aye.
Mulhern?
Aye.
Durkin?
Aye.
Poops.
What kind of order is this?
Just
Aye.
keep it interesting.
He's trying to wake us up after 2.5 hours, you know?
There you go. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, well, that's very good. Mr. Wolf, did you want to say anything very quickly, but if you want to unmute yourself? Still have to unmute. There you go.
Okay. I just want to say thank you. Obviously, we all care about these issues, and it's the first time I've seen you all at work, and you work very tightly together, and it's a great thing to see, and it makes me happy to be in Yarmouth. I do think there's a lot of pressure for development right now, and I think that things like nitrogen, you're right on it. I really appreciate the fact that you are willing to write a letter to other boards, because a lot of times just bringing these issues to light to the others can really change their minds. It can even change developers' minds, you know, that they might be realizing something that they hadn't thought about in that way. They might care about the Bass River very much too. And so thank you. That's all I'll say. I really appreciate you taking this up. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wolf. All right, so we will move on. Let's wrap this meeting up here. Approval of minutes for December 17, 2020.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of December 7th, 2020, written by the mistress of the minutes. Be gender specific.
I've been called harbor mistress, but I've never been called that.
That's a good one. You're gonna that'll go on your gravestone, you know. The mistress of the minutes.
Ellie, did you get my little correction where you missed a seconded?
Yes, I did. I put it in, but it wasn't in green. It was
okay.
Yeah,
was
I picked
Paul
that
who
up.
seconded it. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Tom. Is there a second?
Somebody want
Second.
Okay, thank you, David. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Poops.
Aye.
Durkin.
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Lawrence.
Aye.
Bishop.
Aye.
Huggins.
Aye.
Bernstein.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, everybody. Other business not reasonably anticipated.
I have two things. One was the annual report, so I think we're almost all set on that. I've got a couple of comments from Tom that I'm going to include. And I need to
I've got a comment on that, Kelly.
Okay.
I think that Ed's suggestion was excellent and very well worded in reference to the work that you have done. I feel, I'm in a letter writing mood evidently tonight, but I feel that there should be a separate letter attached to this from the Conservation Commission. Since you were the author of the report, I would never want it to appear to be self-congratulatory.
I did think about that. It did seem a little strange.
Yeah, I tried to say it by saying, that's why I said the
Well,
Conservation
yeah. And
Commission and
the
commissioners.
the commission is submitting the report.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, well, Kelly wrote it. We're submitting the report, so I think it fits fine.
Okay, I disagree, Dave, but that's fine.
I mean,
Yeah, I
a
mean, we can
second,
do it separately.
yeah, a second letter might not be bad either, though. I think it's time the selectmen hear from us, because they haven't heard from us since I complained back
September,
in
was it
October.
September, October? I
Yeah,
did too,
right,
yeah.
right before Napick left, or I was
Yeah.
going to, said he was leaving. So maybe it's time for them to hear from us again. Kelly, can you give us an update on what kind of help you're getting?
Robert should be back with us next week. He was away for the holidays, and he should be with me for January. And I did hear that there was going to be another request put in to fill the position. Whether or not that will be accepted or not, I don't know. But that was to be happening in the short term.
So it wouldn't hurt for us to put a letter in quickly
Quickly.
to the selectmen that says, before they say no, rather than react, take the offense and say, Kelly needs somebody. And Tom, you look like you're interested in writing more letters, so.
Well, I thought it might be yours, Dick.
I will be happy to write that letter.
You're a gentleman and a scholar.
I have to remind myself I volunteered to do that. Okay, I will write that. And Kelly, am I allowed to send that to everybody, or do I have to send it to you first?
Send it to Kelly first, and then
Okay.
she'll distribute it.
Yeah.
Okay, I may call you, Kelly, for some
I'm
facts.
slightly reluctant, but
Okay.
it's up to you guys to do
Do you think
that.
it puts you in a bad position?
It just perhaps didn't go down so well last time, so I'm a little reluctant. But
Was that
if it's
pre
what
or
you
post Mr. Napick, though?
it was when this last came up. I mean, if it's what you want to do, I don't have a problem with that. I just maybe I need to remove myself from the discussion slightly. I don't know whether maybe just sending it to
Maybe I
my
just sent it-
manager at this stage for her to compile the request to fill the position.
Yeah, I'd
I
send
don't
it to Karen Green.
Yeah.
And no insult to you, but eliminate Kelly from playing the middleman and just go right to Karen, because obviously that puts Kelly in a tough spot. But Karen is really the one that should be pushing for it.
Well, I think Dave would word it in such a way that the concern that we have is the efficiency of the office, not to help Kelly, not to do that, but we want the office itself to operate at the maximally high level. And in order to do that, we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah,
Kelly
what
is not a part of this.
What I might need, though, from Kelly are some facts. We had this many 2 years ago. I think you put something together already, Kelly, and I may.
Yeah,
just
I mean,
ask.
so we have a substantial increase in the number of applications and a substantial increase in the amount of revenue that's coming in for this year because of the boom in the industry. So those are facts that are available.
Yeah, so if I could get those, I may call you, Kelly, and or have you email them to me, and then I can write the letter. So, but should I still send the letter to everybody before I send it to Karen Green through Kelly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you always have to go through Kelly, and she'll take
just to disseminate the.
Yeah, she's the one who takes the role of disseminating everything.
And you guys can correct anything you want or add anything you want.
Okay, Kelly, you said 2 things.
So the other thing is my brain is closing down. Seagull Road culvert is still causing problems, and they need to do another emergency repair. They have a project underway for a culvert replacement, but at the moment they're being told there's an 18-month lag in terms of getting these projects through permitting and construction. I think we're already 6 months into that period, but we're looking at another 12 months before it's going to be completed. Meanwhile, the road around the culvert is subsiding and there's washout, so they need to do some more short-term repairs, get us through. So I've drafted up a emergency certification, and I was just going to, I don't know if you are interested in seeing any of it, but this is just the images that have been provided to show where the sinkholes are And they're just proposing to put some extra boards and rock just in these areas to try, and some silt fabric behind to just try and trap some of the sediment behind, to just keep it stabilized in the short term.
Yeah, Kelly, I think there's a no parking sign just down the street there that they could probably bend over the hole or something too. That would
Yeah.
work. Maybe some chewing gum and
I know,
bubble
it looks a
gum.
bit like that at the moment.
Well, that's what they got to do. I guess that's what we got to do.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that with the lead time on these projects at the moment, but I guess that's just the way the industry is. So
The backup is with the contract, or
I
with
think it's with the consultants and contractors to get the plans, design plans done, and all of that, go through all the permitting.
I'm
So,
gonna have two design plans ready in 2 months.
well, you're just too efficient.
Yeah, but that's not the town.
Well, this is not the town. This is the town has contracted out to have this done.
Ah.
Yeah, but you know, you got to go through the whole RFP process, and then you hire them, and then that's their whatever lead time they have. So I'll go ahead and issue that emergency certification for that work. And that is all I have before executive session.
Well, I have a question for you, Kelly. We talked about Parker's River and that they were going to move the power lines, but I saw they had a crane out there. Was it the other day working without the power lines being moved? Are they going ahead?
Yeah, my understanding is they've reached some kind of solution to that problem. I wasn't at the last meeting, so I'm a little behind the curve on it, but I understand they've reached a solution and they've got an extension to the time of year restriction so that they can continue to get the sheeting in. So yes, I think that they've probably started work again.
Yeah,
I saw
they're
them
working on it.
Yeah, I saw them up there, 4 or 5 trucks the other day.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Okay.
If not, then may I have a motion to adjourn from the regular meeting and go directly into executive session for the purpose of discussing litigation related to an enforcement order at 182 Baxter Avenue, and then not to return to the regular session.
Could we take a 2-minute break?
If you give me if you say yes and approve.
Yes, and approved.
Okay. Is
He
there a
makes the
second?
motion, I second it.
All right,
Hey,
everybody
2 minutes.
approved?
2 minutes, that's all I need.
Okay, Kelly, you want to call the roll?
Drink too much
Start with
water.
David first.
Hoops,
she's leaving you behind. Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Mulhern,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Bishop,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Bernstein.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously, and we will reconvene in 2 minutes.
Don't forget that you need to you can take this take us off the YouTube, right?
Yep, I am going
Okay.
to do all of that now. I can't remember how.
Mr. Chairman.